Greetings, citizens of the world. We are anonymous. Government of the United
The summer of 2011, and the world is getting to grips with the rise of hacktivists.
The revolution has begun. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget.
Politically motivated hackers in the form of a leaderless group called Anonymous. Then Lulzsec appears, a jokey splinter group, more chaotic than Anonymous, and more concerned with hacking for laughs or the lulz.
Lulzsec was like a rock band. Lulzsec members were like rock stars. They were entertainers.
It's not a game. This is a crime. It's purely using technology to commit that crime, which, as we've seen, actually makes the attacks easier to commit on a larger scale and on a global scale.
I don't feel like a criminal. I just feel like a kid that put his creativity in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So was Lulzsec just a bunch of cyber jokers, or a threat that had to be taken seriously? In the real world, the members of Lulzsec never met. They lived continents apart. This small group of individuals, most of whom have now been arrested, lived out their lives online, in constant communication. They adopted colourful characters as they crashed websites and published the data they hacked. Like Anonymous, they said they wanted information on the internet to be free. But Lulzsec also wanted to have a laugh. There were many Lulzsec associates, but half a dozen or so central characters, each with their own role and online name. Head of comms and unlikely PR man was Jake Davis. Online, he was the witty and cocksure Topiary. This is the first time he's agreed to a television interview.
Aspects of myself went into it, but it was a exaggerated version of the things I couldn't really be. It's quite a, I think Topiary is a lot, he's a lot more confident than I am, certainly, but I am speaking as myself, truthfully, to you, in a real-life environment, rather than behind an alias on the internet.
At the time, Jake was 17 and living on the remote Shetland Islands. His stepfather had died a few years earlier, and his mother and brother had moved to England. Jake was alone. He'd become a near recluse, rejecting the real world for internet chat rooms.
It was a very limited world. It's a world that you can see and hear, but that's it. You can't touch the internet. You can't feel it. You can't kind of smell it or taste it or sense it. So it's a world kind of devoid of empathy. It was my world. It was a very cynical world, and I became a very cynical person within that world.
Lulzsec's targets were an eclectic mix, only loosely political, often prankish in nature. Members of the group have been indicted in the US for allegedly stealing and publishing a database containing details of 70,000 potential contestants for the X Factor. Here in the UK, some have pleaded guilty to hacking the website of the Sun newspaper and replacing its front page with a false story that Rupert Murdoch had been found dead in his topiary garden. Their name is also linked to attacks on Sony, when the games company was under fire from hackers across the internet, angry about what they saw as the company's blasé approach to keeping people's data secure. The way the group spoke to the world, directed by Jake Davis, defined the personality of Lulzsec, and there was an element of spin too.
PR was so important in creating this mirage almost of a dangerous organization, a threatening group.
Palmi Olsen is a journalist who wrote about many of Lulzsec's attacks when they were at their most active. She's since spoken to the key players.
The process and act of hacking has become so much easier just in the last few years. The tools that people in Lulzsec were using were very, very simple software tools that you can download for free, that anyone can learn. They automate a cyber attack for you, pretty much. They automate the process of stealing data from a website. A kid could learn how to do it.
Lulzsec had grabbed the attention of the world's media with the taunting, light-hearted tone of the publicity around their attacks. Taking a shot at big companies was one thing, but in amongst their targets were several law enforcement agencies. On their Twitter feed, Lulzsec boasted about bringing down a website linked to the FBI. They'd crashed the CIA's home site and sought to embarrass those whose job it is to investigate cybercrime, the UK's serious organised crime agency, SOCA, by forcing their website offline.
Hello? Yeah, hello. Sure, yeah?
Hey, it's Bruce.
Bruce, how you doing?
Later, there would be further embarrassment for law enforcement, with the recording and publishing, in the name of Anonymous, of a hacked conference call between Scotland Yard and the FBI, as their cybercrime teams discussed pursuit of Lulzsec members.
So we've set back the further arrests of until we know what's happening.
Time to strike back, infiltrate.
Attacking the police was a step too far, according to Mikko Hyppinen, who spent the last 20 years unpicking computer viruses and tracking down hackers.
It's quite clear that the law enforcement in the United States and here in Europe took Lulzsec personally, for a reason, because Lulzsec was very brazenly going after law enforcement targets. They were attacking law enforcement sites in the United States, they were recording their conf calls between Europe and USA.
Jake pleaded guilty to a charge related to soccer, which he says is based on a two-line exchange in a chat room.
I typed thousands, tens of thousands of lines of computer text a day, and these two little lines that I probably wrote 7 seconds apart, these stick with you, and these are worth a separate charge that's punishable by up to 10 years in prison.
I suppose it doesn't matter though whether it's 2 lines or 10 lines. It's what it says.
Well, I completely agree. I could have said don't go after soccer, but I said go after soccer. So,
do you regret getting involved with the soccer situation?
I regret 95% of the things I've ever typed on the internet, especially including those two or three lines of just, sure, let's go after these people. Why not? Kind of thing. It can't hurt, and obviously it did hurt both the soccer and myself and others.
You get to explain that in the day of judgment, and your destruction is imminent.
I know. Am I going to hell?
At the time of the soccer attack, the identities of the Lulzsec crew were still unknown, but it's possible that Jake had already let down his defences. His voice was clearly recognisable in a live hack performed on a US radio show against the Westboro Baptist Church, an outspoken fundamentalist Christian group with anti-gay views.
If you check downloads.Westboro Baptist Church right now, you'll see a nice message from Anonymous.
This was early 2011, just as Lulzsec was getting started.
That appears to be from Anonymous.
At that point, having no real identity or being quite carefree, you just think, I'll do it, why not? What's the worst thing that could happen? Unfortunately, the worst thing that could happen is it gets 500,000 views in about 12 hours and is on the front page of YouTube. I felt extremely vulnerable at that point, because it felt like the barrier had broken between the internet and real life. I had like a cold sweat after that, just what did I just do kind of thing.
Tonight, inside the almost impenetrable world of the hackers.
On the 24th of June 2011, Newsnight spoke to Topiary in an online chat room. He came across as his usual confident online self. In reality, he told us, he was in turmoil and now describes that day as a turning point. That's because earlier on that Friday, in the US, Lulzsec members had attacked the Arizona State Police in protest against tough new laws on immigration. They released private intelligence material, names, addresses, and phone numbers of officers, and the content of emails.
I just thought this hack has gone way too far. This isn't there's no point to this thing, it's just harming police officers. This doesn't A, entertain anyone, B, help anyone, anywhere.
The group was falling apart, and unbeknownst to the world, the FBI had a new weapon. Just prior to the Arizona hack, one of Lulzsec's founders, Hector Monsegur, known online as Sabu, had been arrested. Then for some 10 months, he turned informer.
And we know who you are, and we know where you live, and we...
Jake was arrested on July the 27th, 2011. His last tweet as Topiary read, "You cannot arrest an idea." You're obviously a bright person. You've told us you were isolated, but you must have been able to think through that there would be consequences.
At the time, to put in context, I was 17, 18 years old, quite mentally unstable at the time, in a very bad place, and at times I could see through the kind of haze of internet the kind of suppressed everything else into, yes, seeing there would be consequence, but it was more a case of, who cares if there's consequence? I want to live in the moment and just enjoy this glimmer of attention.
Experts have little doubt that Lulzsec will be remembered. They achieved a rare thing, notoriety online and in the real world, in the brief time they existed, what they called their 50 days of lulls. But the outcome has not been a happy one for any of the Lulzsec crew. Sabu is awaiting trial in the US, charged with crimes that mean in theory he could face 124 years behind bars. Other key members here in the UK, including Jake Davis, have been indicted in the US. So far, there's been no request for extradition.
Anyone committing a crime, whether it's a physical crime or a crime on the internet, potentially a global, using global associates or infrastructure abroad, using proxies to hide their identity, that will be investigated. They will be arrested and they will be prosecuted. And that's the message that needs to go out there. We will work with our global partners and industry to bring these individuals to justice.
When you look at groups like Anonymous or Lulzsec, this is not our main enemy. Yes, they broke the law. Yes, they should be punished. But I'm much more worried about organized criminal gangs from Russia, from Ukraine, from Romania, from China, from Brazil. Gangs which are actually stealing money. Gangs which are actually making millions with their attacks.
When I first met Jake Davis face to face, I felt almost this sense of, I was really surprised to feel this sense of embarrassment almost for myself and on behalf of other people in the media, that this was someone who was just able to almost set the news agenda about Lulzsec, and it was just this very young person.
Do you have a message for people who might look at what you've done and in some way copycat that situation?
I hope I've not resulted in copycats. If you have that passion to do something, to outlet your creativity, you have nothing else to do, try to find something beyond the front door rather than get sucked into the computer world. Because if you get sucked into the computer world, you get dependent on it. If you're dependent on it, it's very hard to say no to some things that you will later come to regret.
Jake Davis was sent to a Young Offenders Institute today on a 24-month sentence. He's been on an electronic tag, which will count against this, so expects to serve around 38 days. 3 other young men, all linked to Lulzsec, were sentenced to between 20 and 32 months. The Crown Prosecution Service said the group's actions were cowardly and vindictive and should warn other cyber criminals that they are not invincible.